Hey guys, welcome to one more episode of Let's Go DC's tutorials. I am Vish. Today I'm going to bring you one episode which is going to be core focused on CoreData. I have not much worked on CoreData, but it made sense now to maybe look at CoreData because it is pretty much part of the overall ecosystem of iOS as well as Mac OS. So then made sense to maybe bring something which is around core data. But to start with, I'm going to start an episode which is the implementation is going to be the dirty way or the ugly way, where I'm going to bring in core data within view controller coupled to that. But then that is just to start with, to show how we can maybe decouple core data from a view controller during the later part of the episode. So that's what I'm going to start with. The app is going to be a codes app where a user can maybe insert some codes and then store that in core data, and then later maybe we will provide options to maybe even delete that. But then the idea is basically to understand how core data works and how can we decouple it and make it more modular in the long run. So that's going to be the core focus of this episode. So let's get started. So basically the app is going to look something like this, where you're going to have a code section where you are going to see some of these codes, and also allows the user to add new codes from this section. And this is bound with the table view, which is again the data store is again core data. So this is what we are trying to bring in right now. So let's get started by creating a new app, an iOS app. Let's go to next. Let's call it codes. Maybe let's call it as let's codes. Let's do codes something. And let it be a storyboard based application with Swift, but I'm not going to add core data yet. I'll add it once we have created it, so that will also become easier for you to understand how to easily add a core data model. So let's get started with this. Let's do codes, go to next, and then maybe I'll just keep it somewhere in iOS folder. Don't need a Git repository because I have a separate repository maintained. So I'm just going to create this one. That's my project. Let me use the real estate available and let it target all these platforms. Okay, so we don't have anything yet. We have a main storyboard, and within that there is a view controller. So maybe to start with, I'm going to rename this view controller to codes view controller. So let me call that codes view controller, rename, and then that should get affected even here. So now even this is associated with codes view controller. So that's good. So now to create this kind of a user interface, let's start adding some bits. So we need to have these, a title maybe, and then appearing and disappearing add codes functionality. Maybe you can keep this and keep this section as well as a table view. So to start with, let me add a label quickly. Okay, label. Don't worry too much about how the user interface is looking, because the idea behind this tutorial is to understand how to decouple a view controller. If let's say if you have it within your view controller, a core data decouple a core data out of view controller. That's the idea. So I'm just going to add one more button. Just keeping. I'm just going to call that add code. So you have these and this. Maybe we can club it within a stack view. Yeah, and then maybe set those constraints. Leading filling top. Let's keep the bottom for something else. So let this be 20. I can't select it. It's 20. Even here 20. Yep. And maybe this is enough. Maybe change the color to something. Let's come to that later. Let's add the rest of the things. Now we need to have a text view or text field added for the author section. And let's add a text view for expanding field, maybe not too much high. Maybe change this to something. What's your code? And maybe add a different color to that so that you can easily identify that's a different field. Maybe I'll add a system gray color. 6 enough. Then let's have let's add these again within a stack view. Then let's set the constraints for this as well. Vertical spacing to this, leading, trailing. Yep. And then that should be good enough to start, because it also needs to have the bottom couple of more buttons to be added. I'll add one more button. One more, which is this cancel button. Sorry. So button on the right side. So maybe this too has to be within a stack view. Again, stack view, and then let it be horizontally filling so that it just fits in like this. I'm gonna call this add. Cancel. Just if you don't want to add any codes, then you can just maybe cancel. So I'm gonna pick those colors quickly so that I have those. Maybe I already have it. No, this is foreground. Let me keep that to white. And then let me change the background color to the other color which I had used it. So maybe I'll just pick that same color. This one, that's it. So this color is what I'm going with, as well as this cancel. So that's done. So these three are already in a stack view. Let's now add a table view. Maybe let's use the whole space. Just a little bit of space between these guys. Then maybe I can set those constraints required. Vertical spacing. What time is? Leading space. Trailing. And now the bottom. I guess now one of them needs a constant height, maybe. So let's see what is missing as a constraint. Table view, stack view. Maybe we'll add those missing constraints. I hope that should fix this. Okay, so let's increase its font size. 30. Yep, let's keep it 30 there. Codes, and this this needs a little bit of work. 0 add code, can arrange it to go to the right side, the text maybe. Yeah, that's enough. Add code. You have a cancel add. I think this is pretty much what the UI, what we are looking at. Maybe let's add all the text fields, placeholders and everything. So this should be author, and let's now start connecting this with the view controller. So let me bring add button. Maybe let's start with author. So maybe I can call this author text field. Then I have this text view, which is for codes. So maybe I can call it codes text view. Then I have this, maybe I'll also need these references to hide and show. So I'm just gonna even add those. Add code. Maybe I just go call it as show code, show add code button. Then I also need references of all of these so that I can hide. This is add code button. Cancel button, and that's pretty much what I need, as the controls are the outlet references. And let's maybe add the other things like the actions from these. I need an action from add code. So this action, I'm gonna call it as on add code, on show add code, connect that. Also the other two actions, on add code, and finally cancel on cancel. So all the actions are also ready. So we just need to now handle those actions for showing and hiding these fields. So let's get with that now. So it's going to be a kind of a toggle between this. So let's do that in a bit. So this is your user interface similar to this. So we need to start adding features to start with. So let's get started with that in a bit. So let's start by writing a bit of code for all the validations and everything. Before that, let me delete this existing app. Clears everything, and then let's see running this. It's just going to show you currently nothing. It's just going to show that screen with maybe all these codes and everything. Still loading. Okay, so this is what we have right now. Just shows everything. It does not have any on the table view, so it's not even showing that, but rest of these things are shown. So let's start adding a bit of validation. So I'm gonna create one more function. Let me keep this as a private extensions for having all the private functions there. So I'm just gonna add a function called setup view. Maybe I can call it as reset view, because this is what's going to happen. We can't, I'm not relying on data binding here, but then I'm just going to use basic protocols and maybe closures to work with. To start with, when the app is loading, on launch, maybe after the view did load this happened, I just want to show codes plus add code and does not want this, so I'm just gonna hide the rest of the things. So for reset code, I'm just gonna add show add code set to a bool, and then I'm just gonna use this boolean to reset everything. So I don't need the author text field is hidden, then it has to be hidden. So if initial, I'm gonna pass maybe, do I need to show a reset, do I need to show add code, then I'm saying false, I don't need to show it. So that is, if that's the case, if in this should be hidden, then so I need to say show add code, so that should be disappearing now. Similarly, I don't need okay, there is something which is not yet showing, which is actually this field. Maybe let's keep a basic height to that, maybe because it needs to be an increasing height one. Maybe I'm just, okay, let's rerun and see. So even this field should not appear initially, so it is add code codes text view is also hidden, so that should also be false. And both of those buttons as well, add code button and cancel button as well. Now the rest of the things should remain appeared. I don't need to worry about codes, but let me handle add code, which should be available when show add button. Am I doing it right? So whenever I pass, it should not be hidden. Yeah, it's hidden, it's false, so this should be fine. So let's run again. We should ideally not see most of the things. Okay, add is still there. Basic mistake, show add code button. So now it's fine. So on add code, now we need to enable that. So let's do that. On show code, this button tab, we'll just call reset view and pass true. So I need to show this one, and maybe on add again I will reset it back to false. Also on cancel, the same, false. Let's test this one, and after this is done, we'll go to the part. Yep, this works. So this is what I wanted to show, but then I don't see still this one. There is a constraint missing, height constraint. Let's say that that's the problem. Looks to be the same. Looks like Murphy's law, where if things has to go down, it will go down. Yeah, let me make it as similar as possible here. I don't know what I made. Otherwise, everything is looking this okay. I got to know why. There is a height set for this, because of which the table view has a height, because of which it was added automatically, looks like. So now it's fine. So this is what was causing the issue. So I identified the issue. Maybe this is a problem with the constraints. So we have already some lessons learned about what should not be done with constraints. If it shows that some constraints are missing, maybe it's better to identify those and then fix this, rather than fixing, let the system allow itself to fix, and you'll have these kind of issues. So let's start with the other part, which is implementation of CoreData, where we'll just start to see how that can be done. So we already have the basic logic to hide and show and everything, but the real piece is when CoreData comes into picture. To start that, let's add CoreData as a new file. So I need to go to data model. This is the CoreData data model which we need to add. Do a next. I'm just going to call it let's do codes itself. The model is going to be called let's do codes. That's my model. And let's right away add some of the entities and the fields needed. So I'm gonna call this entity as codes, or maybe rather codes. Let's call it codes. It's actually code because I'm just gonna have and let's have an author field of type string. Then let's create what is the content, and I'm gonna add that is okay. This is going to be author. Second one is going to be the content I'm adding, which is the code content. So that's also going to be string, and let's also add something called as timestamp, which is going to be a date field. So 3 fields is what I'm basically adding. So this is my CoreData entity which is created right now, which will serve our purpose. And once I do a build, it should be available now. That CoreData, adding CoreData is so easy. I never used it before, but then I feel it's something which will at least make your things easy in terms of implementation. I've been a big fan of Realm and still am, but then this is also an alternative, but it is also coming along with the ecosystem of Apple. So its support is far better than if, let's say, we go with Realm, because I've seen in some of my projects that Realm had issues with memory and everything, so we had to reach out to Realm to set up and at least resolve those kind of issues more often. So it's if you're a fan of CoreData, go with it, but then I'm going to show the best practice that you can follow to at least keep everything uncoupled or decoupled within the project. So that's what we are doing. So I'm starting with the dirty way of things, where I'm going to keep CoreData within the view controller itself. So to start with, we need an import, which is going to be the CoreData import itself. No extra package is needed. It's coming along with the UI, within the iOS. So I don't need to add anything. So that one of the good part about this project will be that I'm not going to add any external libraries to the max extent. Maybe for logging or something I might just add, but then not for this project. I'm planning another project on similar lines, but using the map kit, which will also going to use CoreData. That is coming up pretty soon. So to start with, this is the one. So for CoreData, you need to have a persistence container to start with if you have to use CoreData, the entities which you have added right now. So I'm gonna add a persistent container, which is going to be of type ns persistent container, which is going to accept the name of the container which we created, and the name is going to be let's go codes. That's what we had created over here, so that you get access to that persistent container. So the next step is to define the fetch results controller, which is again coming with with CoreData. So why we need this? Because we are going to use this persistent container to load the persistent store. So for that we need to start something like let's go there and set that up first. So I'm going to use the persistent container dot load persistent stores. This is where we are going to load the persistent layer itself. Description and error. So first thing first, let's check if there is an error, we capture that and then maybe print print unable to load the persistent layer or something. Unable to load the persistence store. So that's my error. Maybe I'll also print what that error is separately. Yep. If not, then we proceed with loading the persistence store, and then we can call it persistent fetch controllers perform fetch, which is actually setting up the what is called as the fetch requests, which is needed for having those real-time data sent. So for that, let's if this is happening, then we can print maybe persistent store is loaded successfully. Persistent store is loaded successfully. And then once that is done, we can do a call to now the fetch controllers perform request. That's the reason we need to set up the other part of it, which is to set up the fetch request with all the parameters on which we are going to have the fetch done, even including the sort descriptors on which the response, or at least the response, has to come through with what sort algorithm. So let's do that. Let's create private lazy var, because this is going to be used within this. So if we have to define it outside, then we will have to create it as a lazy var. So it's a lazy instantiation. I'll just show you if we do it without this private var, and then fetch. We can't have it separately outside. ns fetch and private var fetch request controller, ns fetch request controller, fetch results controller, and then it also accepts we need to create an instance. So we should be having this type. We should be returning an instance equals let so it also needs the type. So we need to return a type as quotes. That's what we had created. So, and now let's create that let fetch results controller is equal to ns fetch results controller, accepting parameters which is fetch request manage object, and some of these it needs a fetch request managed object context, section name, key path, cache name. Some of it is optional. Whatever is mandatory, we will create that. So it needs a ns fetch request of a specific type. So let's create that fetch request equals ns fetch request. So let's tell this what is the type it is expecting. ns fetch request of type quote, ns fetch request. So we can create that using the code which we have and just call the fetch request. So that will create the fetch request needed. So we can even directly call it here, or else you can also create outside like this. So now we need the managed object context, which is available with the persistence container, I guess. Yep, persistent container dot view context will give its the context needed. So this is the context we can pass, and rest of the things can be kept as nil. And we anyway need to return this fetch results controller. And one more thing which might be needed is to have it. So persistence controller, because we are trying to access persistence controller from within this var, which is not yet instantiated. That's a reason we need to have this as lazy, because it is going to get instantiated as soon as we make any request or make use of this outside. That's the reason it is lazy. So we need to use it over here as soon as this is done, is when that instantiation will happen. So otherwise this is still something as a lazy variable which we have kept but not instantialized or initialized. So this is my NS fetch controller. One more thing which we need is with the fetch request, I also need to pass the sort descriptors, which is going to be NS sort descriptor, pass the key and value. So key, and I'm just saying ascending. For the key, I'm going to use timestamp as the key because that's what I had kept, and I need it in the descending form. So latest one comes at the top. So this is what my sort descriptor is. So this has created, let's maybe keep a request sort descriptor for that request, then the fetch controller passing these parameters, and finally returning it. So we are going to use this, and after the persistent store is loaded, we need to make a call to fetch. That is going to be the fetch request, I guess. This controller is going to do a perform fetch at this point, and this is after loading the persistence container. The store we just needed, after we load it, we need to call this for fetch perform fetch. This is when it sets up that query, which is going to be now dynamic. So perform fetch is already done. So now it is asking for, so maybe we will call this weak self so that there is no memory leak. Weak self, it is optional. Fetch controller, and now it needs to throw, so we need to keep it within a do try catch. Do try catch, and if there are some errors, we capture that. So do try catch is done. If let, I don't think I need any if let fetch error equals to error, then I'm going to just print what that error is. So I'm just going to say fetch perform fetch failed, and maybe with that error, that's it. Okay, maybe fetch error. So that's the fetch query which is set now. For the load persistent store is loaded, we have set up the perform fetch queries, and one more step which is missing is that because it's going to be dynamic, we need to keep listening to this perform fetch responses as and when there is any insert update delete happening to the data store, which is in this case the CoreData. We need to keep listening to those changes. So for that, we will have to set up a delegate somewhere over here, where I can just say fetch request controllers delegate is going to be this view controller. Cannot assign type ns fetch because we need to implement this. So cannot assign value of type codes view controller to type because that's not yet set up. So let's go and set that up. So I'm going to create an extension to codes view controller and create that delegate. Now it should be sorted. I think it should not give me any exceptions right now, or at least no compilation errors. So we need to still implement some of these functions needed to listen to those changes. So basically what we need is a couple of or at least 2 or 3 callbacks which we need to listen to. One is going to be the controller will change context, controller will change content, and controller did change content. Those two, plus also we need to keep receiving the new index path where the changes happened so that we can update our table view or something. So in this case we are going to bind the table view. So for that, let's start listening to couple of controller. One is this begin will change content. Controller will change content is one function, and the next one is controller did change content. These two, once we have it, we need to update the table view in this case. So we are not we have not set up the table views data store yet, but then let's do one thing. Let's finish the save part even before we go there, because we will focus on first to add something and then try to see whether it get populated to the table view or not. It will not, because we are not set any binding yet, but we'll start with that. So let's do this bit right now where I add an author, and then maybe I add a quote, and then that gets and we will just add it to the CoreData store. I keep saying realm because that's something I've been using for in the past a lot. So let's start with adding. So I have set these two delegates for these fetch controllers, but then whatever is needed right now is to save. To start with, let's save the data. So for that, let me create a save function. So I'm just gonna call all that is needed is for saving is to maybe within this I can just create a function save quote, and that might maybe accept the quote, or maybe the author is enough. I might modify it later once we include maybe models, view models, and everything in the later episodes. But then this is just the beginning where everything is dirty, everything is coupled and not looking so great. But then that's the idea behind this episode, to make everything dirty, and then we go back and then refactor it and make it more modular and cleaner. So saving we already know what is that we are going to store. So we need to store a quote. So I'm just going to say quote, and it needs again a context, which is our container persistence container dot context. This is enough. So this will give me the quote object, and all that I need to do is to use this to set the author, which we have received here, and the content and the current timestamp. Content, and maybe I'll just say date is my current time. Okay, this should be timestamp. So that's done. So that's the first step date is also set. Maybe I'll keep the timestamp as time interval since 1970. In that case, I might have to just go and modify it to double. Or it's fine, I guess, because we are not too much bothered, and this is something on timestamp or date. It's going to be fine. So I'm just going to stick with the timestamp, which is going to be of date. Now, if I have to persist it, I think this step is enough to maybe if I'm just going to use it and without persistence, this step is enough to add it the saving. Maybe I'll just show you with just this bit. If you are just killing the app and relaunching, nothing is going to get persisted. We still need some call to persist it. This is more going to be just keeping it locally within the logical layer and not persisting it. So that's what is going to happen if you're just doing the save. Maybe that's evident, but then the idea behind having CoreData is to have it as a persistent layer. So I'm just gonna go and call the context save function. Again, that's going to give me an error saying you need to do try catch over here as well. Try catch. So let save error equal to error. So this step just gives me that save. If I can just say print save failed with error. Error, save error. So that's pretty much the save function. Now we need to call this when we are hitting, let's say, this add code. This is where we are going to use it. We're just going to call save. It needs the authors, which we already have from author text field.text. The only thing we need to maybe consider is to have a guard here. And let's say author should not be empty. So I'm just taking that value and just saying author dot is empty. If not empty, and the other guy, which is the content, I'm just gonna say author. I'm just gonna use this author here, and also going to bring that content as well equal to the content. What did I call? Quote text view dot text, and then maybe even that. Let's say content is not empty. If these two conditions are satisfied, I can also have a third condition. Like I already have a placeholder called what's your code. So maybe I can even use that. So the save did not happen, so I can just print something over here and say author or content is empty. So that's the condition based on which this is failing now. So otherwise I can save it. So save will happen around here if those two things are not empty. So one more thing I'm just going to do to make it a little more logical is to private static let placeholder is going to be what's your code. So I'm just going to use that. So when this is launching, when I say the reset view, that's when maybe that's the best place to, when it is true. Oh, okay, if it is true, if show add code, and maybe resetting the text view self dot quotes text view dot text should be the placeholder, and maybe the other one, author text field, maybe just clear off if it is set to true. So this is what placeholder must. Okay, maybe I'll not use static and all here. I can just maybe keep it private let. That's enough. So if it is show add code, if it is hiding, maybe when it is hiding I can just clear it off. So what happens now? Let's see. On show, what's your code? If I, let's say, enter something, cancel it, it's again back to what's your code. So it's resetting. That's fine. Even if I, let's say, enter, it's resetting. So that's what was the intention is. Just reset it whenever it is changing. So that's done. So also this condition can also be checked. Let's say if I am saving, before saving I can just say too many lines now, have it in different lines. Content, if not empty, as well as check for this content, or content not equal to placeholder. Maybe placeholder, that's one condition. It should be nice to have. Why, I don't know why it's all messed up now. So God, let them all be together. This looks fine. Yep. So this is what you'll check for. If not placeholder, then I'll let it go, pass through, and then save. So let's see whether save is happening. Do we get any error? You're not going to see anything happening. Failed to load model. Let's go codes. CoreData error. Failed to load model name. Let's go codes. Did we make any error somewhere? Okay, I say let's go. So that's good. We got this error here itself. This error is something went wrong here. It's a failed to load model. So now it should load. It should not give me any error. Perfect. Persistent store is loaded successfully. So this was something good that happened here. So I'm gonna keep author as wish, and maybe if I add, it should say author or content is empty, which is not true, but then that's fine. So because it was actually checking this what's your code, which we had to change. So let's check it again. So I'm gonna say persistence is the key to success. It's not my code, but still I'm talking more about the core persistence here. I'm just gonna say add. So I think author content is again empty. So maybe whatever we are passing is not going through, or something is failing here. Author is empty, content is not empty, content should not be equal to placeholder. Something is going wrong somewhere. Let's check that. I'm just gonna say some quotes now, then say add. Let's see what's wrong. Author, so what's author? Author's empty. So do not pick up, That's funny. What about this guy? What's your quote? So it's not picking up the current values from these two. I think that's because, let me again. That's funny again. So author text field. Not sure what went wrong there. Let's do a check. Add. Again came there, so something is wrong. Still showing empty. Okay, that's because we are resetting it over here, which is wrong. So we might have to do it after the save. Okay, logical errors. Now it should be fine. Persistence is the key to success. Add comes here, so I hope it saves now, but we won't see that save happening because we are yet to bind it with table view. So let's get started with that now, because we have the save working right now. Now we need to start listening to those changes from CoreData, so that we can bind it with table view. So let's get started with that. So let's start with the interesting part of table binding right now, where I already have the data stored, but then it's time now to get that data shown in this table view. So let's get started with at least start with bringing that table view onto the view controller. So let's include that. This is my table view. Table view. And this table view requires a now it requires a cell to be added. So let's add that. New file, UI touch, UI table view cell. We also need the XIB. I'm just gonna call it code cell. Swift. Next. Add to the project. Code cell is available now. Just going to keep it somewhere closer here. So that's my cell. I'm just gonna add a couple of labels. How is that? I have designed it here. Maybe just have a look. Is that something I can just reuse? I'll just try to do that. It's a simple thing, but then again, let's do it once more. So I go to create a label, add it. It's a simple label. Maybe I'll have a little bit more height to accommodate a larger of these guys. So quote label on the top and then an author label at the bottom. So I'm just gonna say quote. Should be within a quote. Maybe that's how it's going to appear. And maybe let me change this font style to light Helvetica, new light, some 24, looks good. And then I'm just gonna have one more label to show the author somewhere here. I don't know, let's keep it somewhere there. Author, Maybe I'll color code author with the other color which I had picked up, this one, and then keep the font to maybe an italic one. Helvetica new thin italic. This font size of 16 will do, I guess. Okay, so that's my font, and let's add these two guys to stack view. Boom, where did they go? Maybe I'll set the constraints. They are there somewhere. I have to bring them back. Let's do that after leading space, top space. Okay, this is the guy who needs change. Which needs 0 is back. And then I guess this should be vertical. Okay, the other guy is gone again. So let's do bottom. Somewhere there is 0. And then trailing should be 20. This is also 20. Maybe 10 is enough. And even 10 here. And now it's all messed up because maybe the spacing is wrong. Yep, now it's all fine. So still some bit to be corrected. So this is all trailing. I just need it as fill, and this is also fill. Now it's all fine, only that this has to go to the right side. That's all good now. Constraints looks a little messy still, I guess. It looks okay. Maybe the top part is a little messed up. It's very close. Maybe I'll just say 5 minus 5. Maybe set height of minimum height for this. This should expand. This can remain, so maybe that's a constraint which might work, I'm hoping. And again, this should be 0. What's that? Had set delete single line. Okay, so let's see how this is going to behave right now, and let's add the constraints, or at least add these outlets over here. Quote label, and the other one, which is author label. That's it. 2. Maybe I'll just do a configure of the cell function configure using maybe the author string and the text, the other text. Maybe it's better that to start with, I'm just gonna include doing it the very bad way of even bringing CoreData to this cell. This is like the tightly coupled architecture. If you're working like this, this is set for failure in the future. So this is what I'm going to start with. Set it for failure and make it better later. So I'm just going to use the quote object itself, or the CoreData entity itself, directly accessing the cell right now. So you can see this is going to fail later when, let's say, you decide to move to some other database. Once this does not work out well. Author, or even if let's say if you want to make some changes here and there, that's also going to fail at one point. So author, and this is the quote label. No, this is quote, so it should be content and author label, quote dot author. That's enough for me. The other third param is going to be used for just sorting, so I'm just going to use this to bind the table view. So this is my table view. Let's go back and register the cell in our view did load. So I'm just going to say table view dot register nib with identifier. So I'm just going to say UI nib and name that nib. Nib is going to be, I'm just going to call it quote cell dot, okay, it should be string describing the class quote cell dot class. This is a better way of doing. Okay, self. Okay, so this I'm gonna just use this everywhere. Bundle is going to be the same bundle, so I can just keep it self. So identifier also is, I'm just going to keep that string describing this instance, which is again quote cell dot self. So it's just going to give me this name, quote self dot self itself as the identifier. Reference to property table view enclosure needs self. Okay, so self. So table registration is complete. Now we need to dequeue wherever it is getting called. So for that we need one more delegate here, which is for the new index path within new index path within controller. Yeah, we can use this fetch controller. Maybe I need that function specifically which we need to use. So that's going to be controller fetch controller with to change. What is the specific one which we need is at section index. This is section index 1. I think index path, new index path. Yep, this is the one. So I have the controller fetch controller did change object index path at index path for type new index path. Whatever we are interested in is this type and the index path. So start with switch type, and this is going to give me all the available ones. I am interested now on insert update, and rest maybe I'll just keep the default and get rid of all the other ones, and except insert I'm just gonna keep insert, and rest of the ones are going to be default. So for insert is where I'm just going to receive this is whenever a new entry is made, this is going to come to insert, and we can start inserting it to our data source, or we can even directly assign it to the table view. This bit is where the magic of CoreData works, where we can see that right away. So it's going to insert. I'm just going to include that if let index path is going to be the new index path. So if there is a new index path request received, then we can directly insert it to the table view. So no major code is needed here. So I can directly bind that table view. I'm just going to say insert rows at index path, which is this index path, and with maybe an animation of fade or something. So this bit is done where insert is happening. We just need to do this, and we also need to do the basic table view data source, and the other ones we have not set. So let's go back to our table view and set up those callbacks needed, the data source one as well as the delegate. So those two things are done. So let's go back and set up those delegates as well, extension, because otherwise table view is not going to work for you. So UI table view delegate, as well as the other one for data source, codes view controller, UI table view delegate data source. So this is where it will ask you to implement the stubs needed, which is self-overwrite index path, as well as count the number of rows in section. So 2 delegates which we need to implement for it to start working. So let's implement that. So this is where we need to dequeue our cell. So let's go and dequeue. So you see there is not much we are going to do during this episode. It's going to be more of the CoreData magic itself, because the fetch objects call itself is going to get us the data source for binding. So first let's start with guard let cell equal to table view dot dequeue reusable cell with identifier for index path. So identifier we already know, string describing instance, which is cell, the only cell which we have created. Code cell dot self is my cell with that is the identifier I had kept, so I'm just going to use that, and I'm just going to say index it. This is going to be not here, it should be within here. So cell for index path, and else I'm just gonna throw a fatal error that maybe that's not a good way of doing it. Maybe this is not supposed to happen, so I'm just throwing a fatal error. So this is more like cell not found, maybe something, there is some error here. So if cell is not available, then in that case, so also I need to show after this what is the cell type is. So code, I'm just going to say code cell, this is of type code cell. If it is code cell, that is when I am gonna return this cell. Also I have written a cell.configure function within that cell, which is asking for code now. So I need this code to be passed, so let me pick that code up, which is going to be available through the fetched I think it is going to be available through the object function of the controller, the fetch results controller, which we had defined, which has an object function at this index path. So this is what makes CoreData work well in, at least in iOS, because you know that it's pretty easy to use it. You don't need to worry too much about setting up those data sources and all, at least if you're using within, let's say, your view controller. But that is Apple's design, kept everything coupled within this view controller itself. But as soon as you start moving it out, you will find those challenges of how to consume those data. That's where I'm going to bring in all the practices which we might be applicable, where you can decouple it and start using it differently. So let's do that. So I'm gonna also do this go guard let quotes to return the count, fetch request or fetched objects, else I'm gonna return 0. If not, just gonna return quotes dot count. So that count part is also done now. So at least now I think it should show me the thing which has happened. It's going to show the whatever we had added earlier as one of the codes, that's going to pop up right now if things are set well. Also, as soon as I'm going to add something new, it's going to come here and then insert even that row over here. So let's see both of those things working. Hopefully, just starting. Oops, that works, but then height is not set. So maybe we will have to go back and height for row index has to be also set. Then height for row index. Maybe we will return table view UI table view automatic height automatic dimension. Is it automatic? Okay, what I forgot, which is that automatic dimension is what we need to return. UI table view. Hopefully this makes it work. Let's see. Not yet. So the height is not right. So let's go back to the cell and see whether it's an expanding one or not. But still, at least you can start seeing the data is getting loaded. Let's do the other part. Let's try that now. Code again. Do you know any better code? I don't know, so I'm just gonna add that. Oops, that's also working. So you already see that it's even the sort descriptor is working. So where is that? So I don't know why this did not. Okay, maybe because I did not have this one properly set. Let's try one more quote. At least should come to this breakpoint. So this is firing now. That this is where the magic is happening right now, where the insert is happening and it is adding those properly. But still I have this issue with the constraint. Let me quickly try to solve it, but then I think that's not really critical for this, because we are more looking at the CoreData part and not on the constraints at least. But let me try fixing that quickly if possible. Okay, bottom, keep it a 5, still moving out. Okay, I think it's -5. Let's get rid of all these heights which we had set. And author, and this guy has a height. Let's keep it simple and start with that. Yep, it does not like it. So that means we have still little more to do, but then yeah, I will try to fix that and then show you in the next episode. At least the continuous in the continuation itself, I will try to solve that, because now we are in a state where things are loading. At least you can see that the core data is working, but within the view controller, which is not the great way of working. So whatever we have to do now is to move this core data part outside, like a database layer, which we normally do. Let's say if you have followed my earlier episodes on Viper and everything, there we were using it outside, not within view controller, and relying on models or view models to bind and take that data part instead of directly using view controller. So that's what my focus is going to be for the upcoming at least the next part of this episode, where we'll focus on moving this out and then create it as a database. So let's get started with that now.